Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Prospectives, your weekly podcast with two professional real estate agents giving our take on the national, local, and some tips for agents in the current market. I'm Jess Preventer with Layer Realty Partners, and this is my co-host,
Keith Valancourt.
We are starting today. Again, I know we talked about this a couple times ago a little bit, of the way that age and generation is impacting the housing market. This was an article put out in March. We're a little late to the game, but talking about how for the first time in 8 years, millennials are not the generation that's buying the most homes.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice little, a nice article here.
Did you find that surprising?
At first I did, and then you think about it a little bit more, and you hear, you read a couple of things that they have in here, and it kind of, it comes out. It makes sense why things are happening the way that they're happening with the younger, as opposed to, boomers are making up. They are making up about 40% share of the buying market, and that's up from 29% last year, which is up even more. So the millennials declined. They went from 43% to 28%. Just in the 1 year alone.
Yeah, and I think it's important to really take a look at these ages. Boomers are 58 to 76, and they're identifying millennials as 24 to 42. So part of what they mentioned here, it's also tied to first-time buyers. The number of first homes being purchased by first-time buyers is significantly lower. So you got to think in most cases, first-time buyers are going to be younger buyers. So the increased interest rates and the lack of inventory are making it harder for first-time buyers, many of which are still millennials, basically under 30, to get in the market. And so boomers are taking advantage of that by selling, tapping into all that equity and really moving on. This quote I thought was super interesting, and we've talked about it before, what is the average of people that stay in their homes. On average, younger millennials stayed in their homes for 4 years, while older boomers sold their homes after 16 years. So if you think about that, it all falls the same, right? So when all these boomers were buying their first home, then they stayed there for 16 years. So it makes sense that the millennials were moving every 4 years, so they were making up a bigger percentage. Now all those boomers are retired, they have no mortgage, they're ready to get a secondary home or purchase something for their children or grandchildren, or retire and move to warmer weather. I mean, there's a lot more incentive, and it makes it easier for them, especially according to this. The less favorable, it's gotten more difficult for first-time buyers, which impacts certainly the millennials to a bigger degree.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about what kind of house you're moving into, think about that too. Has the person selling it been living there for 16 years or 4 years? What true. Level of updating needs to happen? What are the goals of that seller? And think about that as an agent, right? There's definitely different things that are important to millennials versus
absolutely
boomers.
And if you are a boomer and you haven't been thinking about selling or using some of that equity in your home, people are taking advantage of it. Now is a good time for sure.
100%. All that to move into New Hampshire. Now.
Yeah, New Hampshire.
It's so funny because Keith and I both grew up here. Mm-hmm. This is like our home base, our point of reference. But we understand that New Hampshire is pretty small, population-wise, size-wise.
Right, so we see things like that.
And we want to share, right. So we're talking about Realtor.com's hottest housing market. They put this out every single month, and a number of New Hampshire cities and towns have repeatedly been on the list in most recent years. And so in May, which is when we have the most recent data, is from May, the Manchester-Nashua area is again on the hottest housing market, topping the list for the 19th time in the data's history, which is really cool. But what I think is even interesting is guess what the first time we topped the list was?
I don't know. 2010.
2020.
Wow.
So it's like we only have gotten to this list, like basically this was September of 2020, so post-COVID, like in the midst of COVID, sure. And we have remained in the top 20 since February of 2020. So wow. September is when we were first number one. We've now been number one 19 times, but it was February was the first time of 2020. Wow, it's only been unreal. In the last that's 3 unreal. Years. So when we talk about our market and not going too crazy with the national headlines and the crashing and prices decreasing, and this is what we're talking about. This list is determined by two things: market demand, and how they measure that is the unique views per property on realtor.com, as well as the pace of the market as measured by the number of days a listing remains active on the realtor. So to be number one, that means of all the markets that they're measuring, we have the most unique views per property, and our listings are remaining on live for the shortest amount of time.
That's some great criteria to go by. That's not, that's not falsifying any numbers right there. Those are great numbers.
I think that it's so important because we really are operating differently or having a different experience from the rest of the country, or at least major places like California, sure. etc. And I think it's so important for our customers and our clients to understand that. So I don't know about you, but recently I've been dealing with some lovely young clients, not even millennials. I think younger than that. What comes before millennials? They
don't even have a name for it.
But anyway, and they're not native to New Hampshire, and they're trying to buy here, and they're asking for advice from their family in different parts of the country. And though that's totally normal, and your parents definitely want the best for you, their knowledge of our market is not in line with the overall country, or maybe even their experience 10, 15 years ago when sure. they bought their property. So it is super important to talk to a local expert who can really articulate what is happening in this market, in these towns, this price point. And that is what we here at Lair can do for you.
Absolutely. And our chat bots can also do that for you.
Well, can they?
Yes, they maybe they can for now. We'll see.
All right.
What that is brings us to our third topic, which is our tips for agents out there. And it's about, discrimination. It's about chat bots on, actually, let me give it to you right here. Looks like they just recently, about a month ago, introduced a chat bot onto, I believe it's realtor.com and Zillow.com. Mm-hmm. And so now you can ask the chat bot, anything under the sun. And so the question is it gets into discrimination and logistics and fair housing, actually.
100%. So it's actually Redfin and Zillow.
Redfin and Zillow, excuse me.
So one of the important things we need to be aware of agents is not violating fair housing guidelines. So as just a short example, if a client asks you about, how many, the racial context of a neighborhood, or even crime, how much crime is happening, or is this a good neighborhood? We need to be really careful about how we respond.
And schools and stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely.
The safest thing to do is direct our clients to where they can gather the factual information without us putting our opinions into it, which could be perceived in a lot of ways violating fair housing for a variety of reasons. So what this is saying is that Zillow and Redfin have now included chatbots, but that's not new. But what's new is those chatbots now have access to ChatGPT and AI. So they can ask a question such as, can you tell me what the best neighborhood in New Hampshire is for Latinos? Now, as an agent, we would not legally be able to answer that question. We direct them to the data so that they can make those decisions themselves. But an AI chat is going to answer that question. Right. They're going to go on the internet. They're going to pull the data. The data itself, which might be prejudiced or
but accessible.
And perfectly. And then it could say, move into this neighborhood. This is the best neighborhood for Latinos, or whatever the criteria is that you're using. And so can Zillow and Redfin then be held accountable to fair housing rules if they're...
And can the chatbot itself, direct people to buy in particular areas, or for, a number of reasons that we can't physically say to them?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this is a huge thing. I think fair housing is a challenging thing for our industry in general.
Already. And now you add AI chatbots into it that can kind of literally funnel you, wherever they want to either do it, or I don't know if they can be set up to do it a certain way. So, obviously it's very fluid. So I expect more to come very quickly on it. And the good thing is that, they stay up on top of these things. So if something is...
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a hot button issue, and has been for many years now. And, the data itself could be invalid, or could be, skewed. And the AI isn't validating the data. It's just pulling it and saying, okay, this website, this data, this source said X, and then regurgitating it to you. So I think as agents, we need to direct our clients to the information that they want without providing it for them in such a way. Like, they really need to make the decisions, and we need to be very careful that we're not violating any of these.
Just like researching like an illness on the internet.
Yes, it's dangerous.
Right? Exactly. All of a sudden you think you're rushing yourself to the hospital for a small fever or something. So right, you need, that's why you need real estate agents that are going to be in the market and be able to kind of dictate and show you exactly where to go for that.
And if you as an agent have any concerns, you want to go directly to your managing broker or your principal broker or your realtor board. It is super important that you're protecting yourself and you are conducting yourself in an admirable and ethical way. And if there's ever a question about that, the time to take care of it is to ask before you put your foot in your mouth.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to speak. So if you have any topics that you're particularly interested in, please don't hesitate to let us know in the comments, and we will see you back here next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.